Welcome to the 540th episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. Welcome, and thanks for listening. Well, this is the post-Long Haul 100 episode. I got to tell you, I felt good at the start line. I worried about the weather. I worried about it being cold. The weather was supposed to be cold, then hot, then cold, maybe rain, packed a lot of clothes. Took off the day before. I was going to take a half day off the day before. Took off the day before to drive up, stay in a hotel, get our tent ready, and head out the next morning. Day before I took, I guess, the Thursday, the penultimate day before. Busier than usual, office, hectic. Had most of the things laid out, but just wasn't quite organized as well as I would have liked to have been. We kind of got out of town in a haste, but nevertheless, we got to Colt Creek State Park on Friday afternoon. It was a beautiful day, a little on the cool side. Got to meet a lot of people I hadn't seen for a while, meet some new people. We got our tent set up in a good location. The venue at Colt Creek State Park is 16.8-mile loops. Done it before, didn't do it before, so one finish, one DNF, did not finish. I'm feeling about as good as you could feel. A little ankles, I'd been dealing with some ankle issues after the race in October, but I gradually had come back. I took a lot of time, a lot of easy running, I should say, between Daytona 50 and the start of the long haul. Didn't do any long runs, just really took it easy, trying to get my energy back, trying to get my sleep back and get ready. And I really thought I was in pretty good shape. The plan was to run the first loop in 4 hours, the second loop in 4.5 hours, then try to hang on 5.5, try to stay under 6 hours. Ultimate goal would have been 30-hour race. Really thought I had that in me. My plan was to run 3 minutes and walk 1 minute. I brought that down from running 4 minutes and walking 1 minute. So I thought that would give me a little bit easier, less increase in my heart rate, and perhaps drag my energy out a little longer. I plan to fuel with gels and not overfuel because of past GI issues. So I didn't want to overfuel. So I planned on about 320 calories per 16-mile loop. And I plan to do one electrolyte drink, so 120-ounce electrolyte drink per 16-mile loop that has 500 milligrams of sodium in it. And then have the rest of my electrolytes from food. I was going to start out with gels and then just have bars during the loop. And then when I would get back to the tent, the idea was to sit down, have some solid food, and then go back out. I thought I would take a gel either right before getting back to the tent on the loop or right after to kind of give me a carbohydrate boost, because I realized that eating a sandwich, either peanut butter and jelly or a vegan cheese and bread sandwich, you don't absorb it that quick, so I'm going to need some quick glucose. So that was how I laid the plan out. I thought that was pretty good. Saturday morning, it was 36 degrees. It was really cold. Decided to wear tights over shorts so I could peel a couple long sleeves, take a jacket, a light windbreaker. That was good. So I started out. I had the right clothes on. I peeled the jacket off pretty quick, I think after about 3 miles, and was comfortable for that first 16 miles. It didn't start to get warm until the very end. I think I may have peeled off an outer shirt, or at least pulled the sleeves up enough, coming into the aid station at mile 16. I had a drop bag. I decided to have a drop bag at that I would get stuff out at mile 8. My plan was not to stop at these aid stations and spend any time. I didn't want to spend time not moving forward. I wanted to save my time if I slowed down. That was the plan. So I planned to just get water at the first aid station, which was at 3 miles. Then at 8 miles, get my drop bag and reload my vest with my gels and a bar. And then I would get to the 13-mile aid station, fill my water bottles, and then back to 16, and then have the solid food. So that was my plan. And I thought that was a pretty good plan, seemed like it. Everybody was on board. Everybody knew, my crew kind of knew what we were going to do, and everybody was ready. So we seemed pretty organized for the most part. So anyway, the gun went off and took off and felt good. 3 minutes running, 3 minutes running, 1 minute walking. And it was cold, so I wasn't drinking that much, but, I figured I'm not sweating that much, I'm not drinking that much, I'm going to drink to thirst, I'll be okay. I topped off a little bit. I didn't even stop at the aid station at 3.2 miles. I kept going to 8. At that point, I topped my water bottles off and went to mile 13. Again, topped one water bottle off and got into 16. Everything kind of went as planned. My heart rate was in a good place. My pace was in a good place. I actually finished the first loop in 3 hours and 48 minutes. So I felt really good about that. I felt good. I came in. I sat down at the aid station. I ate that cheese sandwich. I decided to do something savory up front so I didn't get fatigued from eating too many sweets. I drank a 7-ounce Coke, thinking that would give me a sugar boost, and went on about my run. It was starting to get warm, so I also peeled off my tights, so I was down to shorts and a short sleeve t-shirt. Thought that was good as well. Temperature actually climbed up into the 70s, but nevertheless, thought things were going pretty good. The plan was to do the same thing for loop 2. And I got to the first aid station doing pretty good. Coming around to the second aid station, was struggling a little bit. My heart rate was starting to come up. Still doing the 3 minutes of running, 1 minute walking. So when I say my heart rate was coming up, it was starting to get into the high 130s. And, I just didn't pay attention to it. I still felt good. I didn't feel like I was struggling. I was focused on the pace. I was focused on that plan, 4 hours, 4:30. Still everything was good. And then I hit about mile 26, and probably between, maybe in the just over, 23, 24, I started to feel tired. I had brought a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with me. I was trying to eat that. All of a sudden, I noticed that my mouth was extremely dry. I mean, just like I hadn't had a drink of water in days. And it's like, I'm dehydrated. I need to, try to put some fluids in. And I don't know. All of a sudden, things started to move slowly, meaning my brain started to move slowly. The fatigue got worse. I felt like I was starting to go into slow motion. My pace was down, but my heart rate wasn't. It's like, okay, I'm going to walk a little bit, try to right this wrong. Still trying to drink some, but I was just behind. I was just so thirsty. And that kind of was what happened to me last year a little bit. And when I started walking, I started cramping. My hips started getting really tight. My ankle was starting to burn. It was getting bad, and everything just kept slowing down. And about that time, I got a call from Michael. He had fallen, and his ankle was locked up, and he was about a mile ahead of me. And he's like, I don't think I'm going to make it. I don't think I got it in me. And, one thing led to another, and it's like, I don't see myself, I think I could, maybe push it, but I just don't see how I'm going to pull this off. So we decided to walk it in, and we walked it in really slow. Unfortunately, we got in by probably about 4 hours and 30 minutes, maybe 4:45 if you added, all in all. So the time wasn't too far off a pace, but just mental clarity was completely gone. I had no troubleshooting ability about me. I felt like I had tried to eat and nothing much was happening. I felt like I had tried to drink. But I couldn't tell you what I had really consumed. I didn't have a plan for the future, and we just pulled the plug. And, we sat there a while. I had a Coke. My ankle hurt, but it wasn't awful. Got up, and actually we were able to load the car up, so it wasn't like I was injured. And the more I moved around, I was okay. I was not done. I was tired. I was fatigued, but I was not, all that done. And, drive home, started to have all the regrets. Did we have a good training day? Did we, pull the plug too early? I could not believe that I lost my head. All the practice, all the training, all the troubleshooting, all the things, I have a bracelet that I wear that says, make today, a good day. It's not zero. Honest, I didn't even look at it. I just basically fatigued and couldn't see my way out of it. Terrible, terrible regrets over it. By the time I got home, I knew my ankle was okay. Like I said, it was sore, but, 31 miles, it's going to be a little sore. So, trying to figure out what happened. The only thing I could think of was I just, didn't have any mental toughness, threw in the towel, just majorly disappointed in myself. Just, really, just couldn't figure out really what happened. And I was told by Addie, our registered dietitian, and my daughter, you can mope around for 48 hours, but you got to get past this and go on. And, back and forth. And finally, started to think a little bit about it. And I started, it's like, got to get over it, got to go on. And I was talking to somebody on Monday or on Tuesday as a patient, and I was telling them about Jill Bolte Taylor and how Jill Bolte Taylor, when she had a stroke, she had a really big left-sided stroke. Her left brain was kind of crushed in, and so she was only using her right brain. And so she came up with this analogy to really show us how we think, and it's basically called the left thinking brain and the left emotional brain, and the right thinking brain and the right emotional brain. And the right side of your brain, the right emotional brain is, or the right thinking brain is, just your being in the world. You're just existing, your connection to everything else. And your right emotional brain is all the things you want to do. You want to run a 100-mile race, and you want to go to Leadville, and you want to do all these great things. And life is exciting and beautiful, and you can't wait to get going, and just there's sky's the limit. And the left thinking brain is, your personality for the most part. You're analytical, you're type A. You use your left brain. Your left thinking brain comes from your left emotional brain, which is your baggage part of your head. So all the things that have happened to you in the past, you draw from. It's what you've learned. So if you're afraid of snakes, it's because you've learned to be afraid of snakes and all these other things. And your thinking brain is very much the control center and really calls all the shots. And if I started to look back at what happened, all of a sudden I was talking to this patient about this, and it's like, I guess I should maybe revisit this and look at it from my own perspective. And the reality of it is, I was in my right emotional brain in the morning, which I usually am. I'm very much creative in the morning. I do all my podcast research and a lot of my medical research in the morning. I run in the morning. I problem solve in the morning, and I'm really optimistic in the morning. So that's where I was Saturday morning. I started out in my right emotional brain. The sky's the limit. I threw caution to the wind. I wasn't paying attention to my heart rate. I was having fun. It was beautiful. I was looking at the trees. I had my plan, but my focus was on that pace and not on my heart rate. I had my nutrition in, but I just kind of dialed it in. It wasn't really something to adjust. That's just how it was going to be. And then all of a sudden, my left thinking brain started to get involved, and it wasn't getting enough glucose, and everything just shut down, and my ability to troubleshoot just, went out the window. So I was like, well, that's a problem. I should have kind of thought about these things a little bit more. But the reality of it is what actually happened. And I believe what actually happened was I was very dehydrated, and I had dropped my glucose. So my sugar was low and I was dehydrated. And, at first it didn't seem that logical because I was taking in gels. I'd had a bar on the first loop. I had that sandwich. So I tried to push down a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But the problem is that when you're dehydrated, you don't absorb anything from your gut. So the higher your heart rate goes, the more you shunt blood away from your gut, your GI tract, and you shunt it to the muscles. That's what's doing all the work. And so, at that point, I was shunting blood away from my GI tract. My heart rate was going up. It was getting hotter. I was dehydrated, and I wasn't absorbing all those things I was eating. They were just basically laying in my stomach, not doing anything. In hindsight, had I stuck to the gels, left the sandwiches behind, I probably would have been able to push that error a little longer. But nevertheless, I soaked up all the fluid in a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a cheese sandwich, and it was just sitting there in my gut. And I got hypoglycemic, and, it was game over. I just wasn't thinking. I had talked to Addie and told her that I think I was going to pull the plug. And, I was so tired. They actually heard my voice, and they couldn't believe that, how tired I sounded. And I really can see the trail where I was, and I felt like I could just have laid down on the trail right then and there and went to sleep if I hadn't have, frightened other people coming behind me thinking something was dreadfully wrong. And maybe that would have been a good idea, although I wouldn't have got hydrated laying there taking a nap, but I might have actually absorbed some of that glucose for a while. But nevertheless, I was, like I said, I was taking in calories, what I thought I was, so I thought I was troubleshooting, but I really wasn't troubleshooting because it wasn't going anywhere. It was just like I was dropping them out of my pouch, and they weren't getting into my, they weren't getting into the glucose wasn't even getting in my bloodstream at all for the most part. The other thing is, again, things always happen for a reason, and I was doing a little research, yesterday, and there's a very famous running coach. He's an author, physiologist named Jack Daniels, and I came upon a little segment where he was talking about intervals. And a lot of people have heard about, you do intervals, you run and then you walk, you run and then you walk, or sometimes you run fast and then you run slower, but there's a time between intervals, and it even can be weightlifting. If you do 10 reps of a bicep curl and then you wait, and then you do 10 reps of a bicep curl and then you wait. The reason for the wait, or the duration between the intervals, is so that your muscles can generate more energy. So in the case of weightlifting, you have to generate ATP, which is the ultimate energy to be able to contract your muscles. In the case of running, you have to be able to absorb the glucose, and it has to be processed into ATP. And if your heart rate is low enough, you can actually use fat, but for the most part, it's glucose. So that's the reason for the intervals. And like I told you, I thought the 3 minutes would make it easier on me, that maybe my heart rate wouldn't get as high. Well, it wouldn't get as high until it got hot. But when I looked back, my heart rate was really never coming down much with that 1 minute recovery. So I was running less, but I was still only doing a 1 minute recovery, or 1 minute interval between these sections. And so my heart rate was staying high, and I never was giving myself a chance to generate energy or to have my heart rate low enough to get some blood flow to my gut. So I decided that, the next change in plans from here on out would be, especially in the ultra distances, is to experiment with longer recovery periods. So I actually did it today. I actually ran 5 minutes and walked 4 minutes. And I pushed the 5 minutes till my heart rate actually got into the high 140s, 150s, as opposed to the 130s when I was doing the ultra marathon. And then within, 2 minutes, I was back down in the 115, 112 heart rate. And then I would go back up and then back down. During the ultra marathon, my heart rate never got into the 1 teens until, the wheels fell off. And then it got down into the 1 teens when I was walking. But it was kind of too late then, and I was too dehydrated. So I think that might be something that I'm going to experiment with. What would be the better interval to allow my heart rate not to go up as high, but be able to recover, and find some happy medium. So maybe I do get into the 130s, but that's probably a little bit high. When you look physiologically at heart rate zones, like when we do a stress test on people, we typically look at potential maximum heart rates. And one rudimentary way of looking at that is 220 minus your age. And there's a couple different formulas, but 220 minus your age is a rough guesstimate of your maximum heart rate, which would put me into the 157 range at an age of 64. So if I looked at a heart rate in the high 130s, that was approaching 85% of my predicted max, which is a point where you start, relying heavily on carbohydrates. So I would be burning through fuel faster in the high 130s, perhaps faster than I could absorb it. So it would, potentially lead to a problem. So the idea is to kind of train some of these heart rates so that I can perhaps run at a faster pace at a lower heart rate and not use quite as much energy, and then recover enough to actually generate some of that energy. So that's somewhat of a plan. The other thing, study that I read, came across, was a recent, there's a lot of controversy about what causes people to bonk, what causes the wheels to fall off. Is it that you use all your muscle glycogen, you lose all the glucose in your muscles, and so you can't, and that's what's traditionally been thought, that you can't go on because you just don't have any glucose in your muscles, and you have to slow down enough so that you can absorb the glucose and get it into your muscles and then go on. And Tim Noakes is a famous researcher and exercise physiologist that has done a lot of work into this and reviewed a lot of the studies. And what they've looked at is that when it tends to be more of a blood glucose drop that causes all the problems, because your brain uses glucose for fuel, and your brain is going to try to protect itself from hypoglycemia. And hypoglycemia in any form is dangerous for your brain over time. That's why when people are diabetics, we don't want their glucose to drop in the 40s, or 30s at night if they hit too much insulin, because they can have, brain damage or, increased risk of dementia. Certainly they lose mental clarity and become unconscious, and, all kinds of bad things could happen. So you don't want your glucose falling into the 30s and 40s because you took too much insulin. It's not going to happen when you're running. It's going to be more of a, 70, 80 range, where 60, 70, 80 range, where you're just not getting enough glucose to your brain to be very clear, and your brain's going to put the brakes on and say, no, this is not happening. So it basically changes the ability of the muscle to take up glucose. So the muscle's not taking up glucose. Everything is shifted towards the brain and the liver. The liver is what feeds glucose into the bloodstream. So the idea is that if your liver can generate enough glucose, or you take in enough glucose to make it happy, and you maintain a steady blood glucose level, you'll be able to continue the exercise or whatever it is, mentation and so forth. And it's not so much that your muscles are lacking in glucose, it's that your blood is lacking in glucose and you're not getting it to your brain, and your brain puts the brakes on everything. So a lot of people argue about what necessarily it is, but it certainly makes sense for me that if my blood glucose dropped, and my heart rate was up, that certainly mental clarity was starting to wane, and my ability to think that I could get my muscles to move. And I slowed down. Everything went into slow motion. And that's basically your body, your brain's way of preserving the glucose for itself. So that certainly made sense from a standpoint of what actually happened. Made me feel a little bit better about my mental toughness, and that it was more of a not being mentally tough, but being mentally stupid, and letting my right emotional brain get the best of me and, send me off, running like I was running a 5K instead of 100 miles, and letting all these things, ignoring all these other parameters or warning lights that my body was sending that I was just choosing to ignore. So, the idea would be maintain a steady glucose, maintain hydration, and things would have been, a little bit better. So I guess I feel better about it being more physiologic than mental, although it was mental. If it hadn't been mental in the first place, then I wouldn't have gotten to the trouble. But so, I was a failure on multiple levels, a learning experience. It does make it a little bit more interesting and fun for me because, again, part of the reason why I do these things is to not only stress my body and stress my mind, but for the mental puzzle, the puzzle of it all. I would like to think that I'm getting better, maybe in little up and downs, but not fast as I would like, which is a little bit frustrating as well. At 63, the clock is somewhat ticking, although people don't like to hear that. So I feel the pressure to kind of get this under control before time runs out, so to speak. But anyway, here nor there. I didn't have, and the other thing was that doing the loops, in the 50-mile race, we had 50 miles straight down the road. Although it was boring going straight down the road, there was only one way to the finish. With loop course, you see the finish, every 16.8. So seeing the barn, I've always been a barn runner, is a little bit more difficult, and requires a little bit more mental toughness because, the end is theoretically there, not there, but it is, the ability to quit is much more accessible when it's sitting right there in front of you and the car's 100 yards away. So, what did I learn from this race? Everything has to be a learning experience. I learned things the hard way. I guess most people do. I hope that I can start to implement some of these things I learn. I feel like I learn after each of my failures, but when it comes to putting them into play the next race, it seems like I'm dropping the ball a little bit. But pre-race nutrition, I didn't talk about. My thought was to have an oatmeal in a cup and a banana. That would be okay. Turned out the oatmeal in a cup that I brought was just awful. I couldn't even get it down. It was so bad. So I pretty much dipped the banana in a little bit, then had a pack of cookies. So I probably had 300 calories. They weren't the 300 best calories, but I did have 300 calories before I started. I could have been more hydrated. I drank coffee before. Quite frankly, I didn't want to have to use the bathroom a mile into the race, so I, drank the coffee. I figured I'll deal with it on the course. I needed to be more hydrated to start with. I think that's something I need to really buck up and do. Better planning on the nutrition. I'm going back old school. I'm going back to gels and chews and deal with the palate fatigue once it happens. Hopefully, by the time I can't tolerate the gels and chews, I'll be slow enough or my heart rate will be controlled enough that I can actually do a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. In the past, it's really worked for me, but I think my heart rate wasn't so high. So if I can keep my heart rate under control, I probably can do some of the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And in reality, when I did a little bit of research on it, it takes 2 to 4 hours to get that to clear your stomach on a good day, so let alone when your heart rate's high. So my heart rate has to be low to be able to eat, lower to be able to tolerate a sandwich. So later in the race, later when it gets cooler, but when it's hot and my heart rate's up, I just need to avoid trying to eat anything solid. It's just not going to work. So that's a lesson I think has been nailed down, hopefully. Again, during the race, I need to hydrate from the get-go with water and mix with electrolytes. I think I had the one packet of electrolytes and then the one bottle of water. I just needed to do more of it. I needed to do more of the water. I think I wasn't pushing that enough. I think I have to look at that. Are you using, do you have to urinate? Because if you don't, there's a problem. So get on that. And then pacing, again, I'm going to try longer walk intervals with the run intervals and see if I can get my heart rate down and pay a little bit more attention. Last several races, I've just kind of thrown heart rate out the window and just said, I'm running. I don't care. I feel good. I'm running how I feel. It's pretty stupid when it comes to, especially coming from a cardiologist. I really should pay attention to my heart rate. It's worked for me in the past. I know when my heart rate gets to a certain amount, bonk is in my future. I don't know why I chose to ignore it, and I've done it for the last couple of races because it always comes back to bite me. You can kind of get through it in a marathon, at mile 18, that can, you can bonk, and then you can come back after a couple miles and finish out okay. But when you're looking at something like this, it's just really hard when you dig such a hole to come back around from. I don't want to die in the chair. That'll be that I need to probably get another armband. I guess if you get an armband, you're going to actually have to read it. I've always kind of giggled and laughed about tattoos. I am not a fan of tattoos. Actually, they're not good for your health. But I always kind of wonder why people get the tattoos that they get, Mickey Mouse or some kind of crazy thing, or what they actually mean. And most people, I don't think, look at them, right? They expect somebody else to look at them, and maybe that's a good thing. But same thing happened to me with this armband. I'll say I'll wear jewelry, but I got this armband that's supposed to be talking to me, and I need to actually look at it if I'm going to wear it for a meaning. That really should be, watch your pacing, and watch your attitude, so to speak. So how does this all apply to plant-based nutrition and heart health? It just comes back to we're all human, and the best laid plans. Like I said, in the morning, my right emotional brain is spot on. I have my nutrition dialed in, my exercise dialed in, everything is dialed in. And as the day fades, so do some of my best laid plans. And I think that happens for a lot of people when it comes to nutrition or their exercise program. The night before, you're all in, you're going to do it, and the next day, things happen and your brain gets clouded and you get confused and you struggle. And I think it comes back to life as a struggle. I spent 48 hours, moping around, regretting what I did. I even discussed, you're going to feel bad if you pull the plug before you're ready. It's better to have a good story, all those things. But in the heat of the moment, things happen, and that's human nature. So we can just kind of get back up, dust ourselves off, and go again. We have the future races planned, racing again in March, the long play, which we've done before. It's a 50K, so it's actually 33 miles. And then Skunk Ape again, that'll be a 50 miles. Get to redeem ourselves there, and then go from there. We're scheduled to do the Silver Rush 50, and by God, we're doing Leadville. We're going to the 100 to see how far we can get. So a lot of good practice. The best part of it all is we're outside. It was 8.5 hours of wonderful, beautiful weather with friends. I am very thankful for our crew, Linda and Lou, and sharing the experience with Michael. I have a new pacer that I didn't get to use, Dr. Jennifer Wellington. And she is also a plant-based physician, so we were going to get to share miles. I hope we get to share some miles in the future. I got to see old friends, make some new friends. Again, it's a beautiful venue to be outside. So all in all, it was a great day. We had some fun, fun times being together and being outside. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's why I want to do it again, just to be outside and away from, the city streets and everything that goes along with it. So I encourage you to get outside and do dumb things in the woods and, push yourself. And, if you make mistakes, you just try again. And I had a new patient today, and it's like, if you expect to be perfect right out of the gate, or you expect your nutrition to be perfect, and follow some of these guys that say, you must, and then it doesn't happen, it's be very disappointing, and it's hard to keep going. So you got to give yourself a little grace. I'm going to give myself a little grace, and keep plugging along and try to get a little better each time, and enjoy the experience and share it with other people. So it's not over till it's over, and I'm going to keep plugging along and keep pushing. Thanks always for listening. If you'd like to learn more about our practice, go over to drdulaney.com, DOCTORDULANEY, and check it out. We've got all kinds of memberships that we can help you try to accomplish your goals and talk about your struggles. We meet people where they are as far as their nutrition, their exercise, and try to help them get a little bit better. You can email me with questions at jami@drdulaney.com, JAMI@drdulaney.com. Thank you as always for listening. If you enjoyed this, share with a friend. Happy to hear from you. Thanks for the emails, the people that are sending them in. Have a good week, and I'll talk to you next week.